Right, nice to be back with you. And we're plugging away with the Vigyana Bhairava. And as I've said a number of times, more and more, I see that it is actually a fantastic spiritual system for the modern world. And even especially during this lockdown, where somehow it speeds up the mind. You think that when people are isolated, it would slow the mind down, but actually, I don't think it's like that. I think it's speeding everyone up. So we need ways where we can create a bit of spaciousness within, so that we don't get swamped by too many thoughts and too much input. So more and more, I mean, I was sold on this system many years ago, but I think it's an absolutely fantastic system for the modern era. So today I'm going to do things back to front. And of course, the text itself takes things back to front. It introduces the most fundamental one at number 27, 28, actually. So I'm following in the tradition of doing things back to front. So we're going to look at the last one, which is Dharana 112. So 112, it's something which we cannot understand intellectually. And at first contact, it may seem to be complete nonsense. But actually, it's a very, very profound statement. And the Dharana goes as follows. Everything gets revealed in jnana. And here jnana means insight, direct insight. And it means a kind of intuitive flash which transcends our conceptual thinking. So this is fundamental. I'm sure many of you have experienced these kind of flashes, which you can't put your finger on and you can't say where it came from, but there it is. It's an insight into something. And consciousness is the intelligence which permits this kind of illuminative experience. It's not in the mind, actually. It may come through the mind, but it doesn't take its root in the mind. It comes from a deeper level. This is what this verse is saying. But the nub, the essence of this verse is actually the last sentence, which is as follows: reflect that the ultimate nature of the knower and the known are not different. I mean, this seems to be nonsense because the knower is our individuality, which looks through the senses, perceives through the senses, and through the senses we see all these different objects. So it's evident from our sensory experience and from our individual experience, and that, you know, if I'm looking at a candle in front of me, that the candle is over there and I'm here. There is separation between what we see and the person who is seeing, you, me, whatever. This is something that is part of life. It's an assumption that's built into our system, but through meditation, through yoga, we're trying to actually get an illuminative experience that actually there is no separation or difference between what you see. It can be the other senses too, between what you see and what you are as an individual seer. We can't understand it, but if we could kind of get in to reflect on this, as the Dharana says, if we can just reflect on this, it may, in time, there needs to be some bit of an obsessive trying to get an idea. What does actually this mean? How can what we see be not separate to we who are seeing? So it's a bit of a mind twister, and it's intended to be a mind twister. And like in science, when there's something that's a paradox, so someone goes deeper into it, and they find the answer to a paradox, whatever it may be. So it also ties in, as you know, I mentioned in passing the quantum physics, and it also relates to the fact that in quantum physics, the person who's running an experiment actually influences the result of the experiment. That's where this dichotomy between the person who is perceiving or seeing and that which is perceived breaks down. So quantum physics is pointing at this direction, and yoga, tantra, Advaita have always proposed this as, as a spiritual experience, actually. So you can't get it through thinking. So look at an object in front of you, look at any object and perceive, yes, it is different to me, it's no question. Whatever you're looking at, picture on the wall, a crack in the in the wall or ceiling, or a nail or screw or candle, whatever you're looking at. And I'm looking at a lamp at the moment in front of my computer here. And there is no question, there is separation between you as the individual perceiver and what you are perceiving through the sense of sight. So thinking is not going to get us there. Let's come back to what we started to develop last time, which is the Dwadashanta. You remember? We practiced, maybe in a minute we will repeat it because it's a fundamental part of the Vigyana Bhairava, this Dwadashanta, this distance, this virtual space, or this imagined space, or this actual perceived space, whatever it may be, 12 finger widths from the physical body in all directions. And of course, it's related to the pranamaya kosha, the energy body. Our body is energy, and there's also a field around and within the physical body. So let's look at this number again, but now try to get in touch with this Dwadashanta. So you remember, you lift your hand to do this, and you may not need to do this. If you've been practicing, you'll be able to get a feel for this Dwadashanta without actually raising your hands in what is called Bhuchari Mudra. So get in touch with this cocoon of spaciousness, if you like, or cocoon of energy, the Dwadashanta, in front of your eyes, but around your body in general. And you are still looking at the object in front, but relating it to the Dwadashanta. You don't need to pretend there's no distance, no separation, no difference between what you're seeing and you as the perceiver, the seer. But just relate to what you are perceiving through, with reference to, from the perspective of the Dwadashanta, this space around the physical body. And remember, you don't need to do unblinking gazing as we do in Tratak. Yes, whatever the eyes want to do, they are blinking or not blinking. But you are relating what you are perceiving in front of you as vision through the eyes from the perspective of the Vajracanta. Okay, now you can close your eyes and reflect on this last dharana, this 112 dharana, and I will remind you what it is. Everything gets revealed in jnana, direct insight. Consciousness is the intelligence or the source, if you like, that permits this kind of illuminative experience. Reflect, and this is the important part actually, reflect that the ultimate nature of the knower, this is the individual knower, and the known are not different. Okay, so we'll come back to that one probably later, but if we don't get time, then next time, because it's a good one. Well, they're all good ones, actually. And now we're going to jump right to the beginning, because as I've said many times, one of the beauties of the Vigyana Bhairava Tantra is that it gives us tangible supports in deepening our meditation, our practice, our relationship with things around us. So we're not going to go to number one, dharana number one, because we did that last time in the last course. But we're going to do number two. And dharana number two goes as follows. Be aware of the breath as it turns from out to in, and again as the breath turns from in to out. It's a very, very sweet one, actually. And remember, the breath is something that takes us out of complete absorption in thinking. And as I've said, thinking, nothing wrong with thinking. We are thinking creatures after all. But thinking tends to take us around in circles, especially if we're trying to look deeper, understand deeper. Thinking, we know, is absolutely essential for living our lives, but for looking deeper, for trying to go deeper, in fact, thoughts are an obstacle. So the breathing is a way of kind of helping us to shift a little bit out of being completely lost in our thinking processes. So we will now, and this one is a way of slightly modifying the way we perceive the breath, again as a way of going deeper. So eyes closed, and we're going to create in our imagination here now two spaces. One is the inner space and the other is the outer space. So the inner space we can say is the heart space. So bring your attention to the chest and feel, imagine there is a space, an inner space there. And now bring your attention externally, I mean the eyes are still closed, to what we can call the outer space, and that is the space beyond the Dwadasanta. So the eyes are closed, but you are, in a sense, externalizing your attention to be in touch with the external space, not the space around the physical body as such, but the space around the energy body or the Dwadasanta. And then bring your attention to breathing. No need to control the breath, just let it be as it is. And feel as though the breath is moving, as it does actually, from the outer space inwards to the inner space, and then with exhalation from the inner space to the outer space. Try to feel this process, breathing in, feel as though the breath is moving from the outer space beyond the Dwadasanta inwards to the inner space, the heart space, and then breathing out, moving from the heart space, the inner space, to the outer space, beyond the Dwadasanta. Focusing completely on the flow of breath. And if you wish, you can synchronize the Ujjayi pranayama, inhalation and exhalation, so that you are focused on the flow of breath and the synchronized sound of the breath. And You've all seen a pendulum, and a pendulum, it's that it goes to its lowest point, and then as it goes up on one side, already there is a pull in the opposite direction. And eventually the pendulum reaches its highest point, and then it goes in the opposite direction. And then that repeats on the other side. Before it reaches the highest point, already there is a pull, a gravity pull in this case, to start the descent in the opposite direction. So this is something like this. Here you are following the breath and the sound of the breath. And before the end of inhalation, before you reach the inner space, already you are starting to feel the pull towards the exhalation. And then the end of exhalation, coming towards the end of the exhalation into the external space, already you can feel the pull into the inhalation. So try this. There may be a slight pause as you go from inhalation to exhalation and exhalation to inhalation, slight pause, but it's just a changeover actually. It's a kind of mental gymnastics, but when we do it, it does internalize our attention, and it helps enormously to take us away from the constant thinking processes. And this, we'll repeat this, I think, during the course, because it's a nice one. And this takes us very nicely on to the next dharana, number 3. Be aware of the inner space where the in-breath fuses with the out-breath. This can transform into Kevali Kumbhak. Kevali means only retention. kumbhaka retention, where there are no thought patterns. And we know, of course, from our practice that when the breathing processes slow down, then the thinking processes also slow down. So this can transform into kevali kumbhak, retention, spontaneous actually is the sense, spontaneous retention, where there are no thought patterns. Here, there seems to be no energy. You're thinking no breathing, there's no energy, but yet it is the source of energy. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that when the thinking diminishes, in fact, you can be filled with energy. We tend to think that if we think and pump the system, that we get enormous energy. Yeah, we may do, but a more subtle and a more powerful energy is actually underlying the thought processes. So, eyes closed, we're going to dharana number 3. Allowing the breath, inhalation, exhalation, just to find its own level. And if having practiced the previous one, where probably the breath was quite long, then you'll find that there's a tendency now for the breath to almost stop. So as it stops in this zero movement, or not, maybe not quite zero, but in this almost non-breath, be in touch with the inner space, the heart space. So you are noting that the breath is very, very slow, very subtle actually. This is probably the case, as I have said, having practiced the previous dharana, number 2. Note the fact that inhalation and exhalation have fused. In a sense, they have fused. This is the terminology they use. And in this fusion, where there's very little movement of the breath, be in touch with the inner space, the heart space. So there's no need to strain. You're just letting the breath find its own rhythm. And as I've said, having done the previous practice, and you can do pranayama as well, there is a tendency for the breath to become very slow, very subtle actually, so that one has the impression that the inhalation and exhalation have fused. Feel this fusion in the heart space. And this, of course, is something that you can do during your Hatha Yoga practice. You do a posture, asana, and then just stop, bring your attention to the heart space, and feel this fusion of inhalation and exhalation. So these practices, not all of them, but many of these dharanas can be practiced in our daily life. And it's just a question of creating the reflex or the habit of being busy, and maybe we're busy with this and that, and then just stopping. Eyes can be open, closed, it depends. And you practice this kind of practice. Any of them. The first one, these are all ones which I haven't introduced. They're very simple. Well, the first one isn't simple, actually. But number 2 and number 3, the ones we've just done, they can be done at any time, just to stop our busyness for a few seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. And this process will help us to become more introspective, even in our daily life. And as I've said many times, the beauty of the Vigyana Bhairava is that it tells us something that's obvious in a sense, but we don't realize, we don't put it into practice, that our daily life can also be our spiritual life, even with all its ups and downs and challenges and all the rest of it. If we start to change our relationship with life and what we're doing, then this will help us to become habitually more introspective. And by becoming more introspective, life goes on, of course, but it allows us to access our intuitive faculties, even in daily life. And it allows us to become more conscious, actually. So then we'll try and come back to these, because the breathing ones, they're really, really earthy. I like them because they're earthy. The first one we did, number 112, I also like because it's kind of pushing us to go beyond our understanding, if you like. And there's another one which we did in the previous course, which actually I like very much. And we're going to repeat it here, because again, it stretches our perception. And it's number 12, dharana number 12. And it says the channel of awareness is situated in the middle. And of course, this is just a concept, because in my opinion, there is no specific location of awareness. Yeah, in the paradigm, the yogic tantric paradigm, it's the sushumna. The sushumna is the path of awareness, but actually, and it's given a location in the spine. But of course, there is no location of awareness. It is there. All of us, we are conscious, but there's no location of it actually. Anyway, for the sake of practice, dharana number 12, the channel of awareness, the way the awareness moves through our body, but also through every facet of our life, because we are aware physically, sexually, vitally, in terms of feeling, communication, thinking, intuition, and so forth. There is awareness on all those different levels, which of course are the chakras. And yeah, the channel of awareness is situated in the middle. So let us call it the middle of the body, but more traditionally in the spine. And it's using a bit of poetical license, and is like a slender lotus stem. And of course, it's a beautiful symbol actually, because we know the lotus or the lily, water lily, it's got its roots in the mud. We have the roots of our physicality in matter, good healthy mud, and it grows. You know, we grow from the matter as the physical body, but the physical body then acts as a vehicle so that we can access these other spheres of experience, the chakras. So the stem is beautiful because the flower, the lotus flower or the water lily, it's kind of starting from the mud and then it's moving up through the different layers of the water. And of course, it produces its beautiful blossom above the water, beautiful pink or whatever, white, whatever the color may be. Extraordinary picture, petals, flower. And this is like us. We have our physical base and we grow through these different facets of experience, and we can blossom. And this is the whole point of yoga, the whole point of these dharanas also. We can blossom as a beautiful flower. So it's very symbolic. It's a beautiful symbol, actually. It's like a slender lotus stem. But then it brings these dharanas kind of, they put a twist in it so that we can't get too fixed in our concepts. It brings a little twist. So the twist in this one, which I like very much, meditate on the spaciousness within the stem to reveal essential being. So, you know, if you open up a water lily lotus stem, I don't think you'll find very much space. It'll probably be very watery, spongy even, but it's not very spacious. So here it's asking us to put our concepts to one side and to go into this kind of practice so that it opens us up to understanding which is greater beyond actually our normal conceptual understanding and our daily life experience also. So let's give it a whirl. Let's try this one. We did it in the previous course. We haven't done it in this course yet, but it's such a good one. I'm a great believer in repetition, and I think some of these practices we can repeat them 500 times, and still they will reveal something. And so let's do this one. So take a comfortable position. Move your body, legs, arms, whatever is necessary to eliminate stiffness. Move your body, your head. Eyes closed. And bring your attention to the body, the physical body. And imagine that the body is an empty vessel. Bring your attention to the virtual space within the physical body. And in that space, try to imagine there is growing a lotus, water lily. You can imagine it in the spine if you wish, but it may be easier just to visualize it in this inner space. And if you can't visualize, it's not the end of the world. Just get a feeling for it. You don't need to visualize a perfect image. Just a feeling will do. And the roots of the lotus are there where your body is touching the ground. And growing up from the roots is the stem, moving up through the different layers of our life's experience. A slender stem going up through the space, the inner space, and the flower, the extraordinary flower, appearing at the top of the head, open to the sun of consciousness. So you can enter this stem at any level, actually. You could enter it at the level of the Swadhisthana, or you could enter it at the level of Manipur, navel. You could enter the stem at the level of the heart, or at the level of the throat, Vishuddhi, or at the level of the Agya Chakra, center of the head. And symbolically, of course, we need not do it here, but we can actually enter into any sphere of our life which maybe needs a bit of light, which needs some investigation or some deepening. So maybe choose a particular aspect of your life, your personality also. And as you go into the stem, instead of finding some fleshy material, you find that it opens out into spaciousness. So spaciousness is an important aspect of these teachings. It's kind of emphasized actually in the dharanas. But of course, yoga itself is intended to create more spaciousness so that we are not completely lost in mental phenomena. Remember, we're not rejecting anything in particular, but we're trying to change our perspective. And this sense of spaciousness helps us to change our perspective. Yeah, there's so many good practices. I'm just looking at one more before I hand over to Hari Om. And yeah, 91. I just kind of struck me. I've got a list of the dharanas in front of me, and I'm looking at 91. There's so many. I'm I'm spoiled for choice, actually. Anyway, 91. Let's just reflect on this before I hand over to Hari Om. So 91 is as follows. Wherever the mind goes, be it externally or internally, there is nothing but Shiva or reality. Where can the mind go to avoid it? Actually, it's very profound, and I think it's very useful because, you know, when the mind is behaving like a monkey, you may be able to reflect, yeah, it's all about this and it's full of anxiety or whatever it may be. But even that anxiety is a reflection of reality. We don't need to define reality. We can't define reality. Our mind is not capable of defining reality. But at least we can buy in, have the feeling that everything, whether we look outside, inside, whether we're looking at the sunrise or the moonrise or trees or flowers, they're all reflections of one reality. Not two realities, not three realities or 500 realities, one reality. This is a fundamental presumption of all spiritual sciences, I think, certainly yoga, tantra, Advaita. Advaita, non-duality, not two. There's only one reality. So even if our mind is full of nonsense, and even if we would rather be rid of constant thinking or feelings or emotions, nevertheless, they are still an aspect of a reflection of reality, one reality. And of course, each of us here as individuals are also a reflection of that one reality. So I don't know how we're going to do a meditation on that. It's one of these reflective ones again. So I suggest that you just sit quietly. Eyes can be open or closed. In fact, let's open the eyes first, look out, see what you see in front of you, see what you hear, and know that whatever it is, it's an expression of this one ineffable reality. We can't grasp it with our thinking. It's impossible. It's even a presumption, pretension, I would say, to think we can grasp reality with thinking. So whatever you see, right now, close your eyes and look within, and whatever's going on the inner plane, thoughts, feelings, visions, these are also reflections, expressions of reality. And as I have said many times, on a more fundamental level, there is actually no difference between the outer and the inner, which of course is not accepted by materialist thinking. Materialistic thinking is the inner is just some kind of noise in the brain. But it is not as simple as that, actually. And I more and more think that even dreams, extraordinary dreams that we all have, they are just as real, actually, as anything else. And in fact, the dreams are reflections of the Akashic records or the cosmic mind, the world of archetypes. So whatever is going on innerly, know that that is also an expression of reality. But of course, the nature of life is that we are destined or obliged or conditioned to identify with certain whirlpool patterns within reality. These patterns being our personality and all kinds of thoughts, images which arise. And this is the nature of life. I don't think we can change it. In fact, we can't change it. But at least we can start to open up our understanding. We are conditioned. We are conditioned beings by definition, but as human beings, we have the possibility of allowing our understanding to reach out beyond what we are as a human being, actually, beyond the personality, through intuition, insight. And one of the ways to do this is to create this spaciousness. The feeling that I exist as an independent, self-motivated being is based fundamentally on ignorance. And here, of course, it means spiritual ignorance. Life has designed us actually to be exclusively concerned, basically, with our own individuality. This feeling that this belongs to me is also basic about it. Everything that we think we own, we don't own them at all, actually. We are just guardians of the things that we say, yes, that is my house, that is my car, that is my this, that my that. Of course, we live our lives. We can't not have that feeling of possession because it's part of the kaleidoscope of life. But we don't need to take it to heart. And certainly in the philosophy of yoga and tantra, the aim is not to get our exclusive identity and meaning even from the things that we have things that we possess. And of course, the aim is to find meaning by seeing what we are on a deeper level. Nevertheless, the verse continues, know that even this spiritual ignorance is based on that which has no ignorance. So it means the play of life is such that we are conditioned to identify but the intelligence, if you wish, which creates this conditioning is not based on ignorance. It's a fundamental process of life that all beings identify knowingly or unknowingly with a particular form. We can't get away from this, but we can at least open up our understanding. Realizing this, be peaceful. So let's take that again so you can get the whole verse. Dharana 106. The feeling that I exist as an independent, self-motivated being is based fundamentally on spiritual ignorance. Even our self-motivation, where does it come from actually? We have the aspiration to succeed in a particular job or to start a business or to practice yoga, to go deeper in our practice or to teach yoga. Where does it come from? We think, well, it's my motivation, but I think that's rather superficial actually. There is a motivation which comes up from within, and this makes us undertake all kinds of projects, work, relationships. So it's trying to see our motivations, which we think is my motivation, my aspiration, my desire, and actually having a bit of humility and realizing that desire, that motivation is coming through me as an individual personality. The feeling that I exist as an independent, self-motivated being is based fundamentally on spiritual ignorance. The feeling that this belongs to me is also based on ignorance. Nevertheless, know that even this ignorance is based on that which has no ignorance. Realizing this, let us be peaceful. Let us play the game of life. Let us live our life. Let's live fully. We don't have much choice, in my opinion. We are driven to live life fully. And what is important is to have some humility and to realize that there are underlying currents which are driving me. The current doesn't actually start with me, it comes through me. So we don't need to change our life, particularly. We may need to make minor adjustments, and even when we make minor adjustments, the impulse to make minor adjustments or big adjustments, it comes from another level. It doesn't actually start from me as a personality. Of course, we still subscribe. Someone says something and you say, well, I had the idea, my idea. We don't need to get too precious and say, well, it was an idea that emerged from consciousness and expressed in me so that I think that I have it. It's my idea. No, we just say, yeah, I had a good idea or I had a bad idea. And having some humility also allows us to get in touch with that, which is the source of motivations, desires, aspirations, ideas, thoughts even. So that applies to everyone. So even if we have a disagreement with someone, as we do, we take it personally, but on another level, we don't need to take it personally. It's just the way things are. So if someone is misbehaving or doing something silly, yeah, surely we can tell them or do whatever is necessary, but on another level, knowing that that's just the way that intelligence is manifesting through them. And even though we do not understand, I certainly don't understand it intellectually. This applies to the most horrible things that we have seen happening on planet Earth, and even horrible things that are taking place now. And if we need to flex our muscles and do something about change, we should get on with it. And even that impulse to try and make change, that is coming from another level also. We will never understand the dynamics of life. But what we can do is to realize that behind it there is one reality. We cannot understand it with thinking concept. So it's something to bear in mind. And our life doesn't change, but our understanding may change. And I repeat, maybe for the 10th time, if something needs to be corrected and we have the facility of correcting something or changing something, we should do it. Absolutely. We don't need to be pincushions. But with this wider dimension of understanding where things actually are the way they are, and they are all emerging out of one reality. So let's see if we have any questions. I've got one question here actually. So you can move your body, adjust yourself. And I've got a question here from before the session, and it goes as follows. I think that I may be naturally sensitive to the energy around me. Well, I think we all are, some more than others, that's for sure. There are some people who are super sensitive, actually. And of course, by being super sensitive, we may also be super vulnerable. And this is a challenge that we all have on the yogic path. We become more sensitive and we become more vulnerable. But as I always say, we need not be flattened by extra sensitivity. The aim of yoga also is to make us more fluid, more spacious actually, so that even negative energies around us, they don't go straight into our heart like a dagger. They can come into us, we know they are there, but they kind of come through us and they move on. They don't knock us flat. And this is one of the big challenges of spiritual life, actually. Being able to remain balanced, even when we are subjected to negativity, direct negativity, or kind of subliminal negativity, or general cloud of negativity. And the question continues, I would like some advice on how to deal with the negative emotions of others, which I feel very deeply. Yeah, I think everyone has to. Yeah, I think this is a very common question, and I've often responded to it. And it's something we have to learn. You know, we all had to learn to write and to talk. And on the spiritual path, we also have to learn certain skills. And one of those skills, and it's difficult actually to say how, it's just something that kind of grows in us. One of those skills is where we do not take on board negative emotions from others. It's a kind of it's a maturing of our understanding. As we become more spacious, more open perhaps, instead of becoming more likely to be flattened, we are more able to sustain. No negativity is there, but not to be flattened by it. And as I went through that process, I think I said it even last time or sometime recently, I went through that process in India, and I had to suffer actually to come to a point where I wasn't flattened. And it doesn't mean that we are blocks of wood, it doesn't mean we have to, shut off. Even if we could, I don't think we can shut off actually. But yeah, there may be a time when we're extra sensitive. It may be useful to reduce our practice. This may be one thing to do so that we're not quite as sensitive. And we can do, of course, these standard practices where you feel as though you've got a protective, energetic armor around you. I don't think this is a long-term solution, but it can be very useful. And I have used this myself in the past. But it's an occupational hazard for people on the spiritual path, whether it's yoga or whatever it may be. So we do pick up negativities from others, and it's slowly developing it where we don't take it so personally, actually. If we're totally identified with our personality, then of course we will take it straight in the belly, of course. But if we understand that there is a wider dimension of our being, then we don't take it so directly into the heart space, into the belly. As I said, there's no easy way on this one, I don't think. We have to learn, and unfortunately, we may have to suffer a little bit. I wish it didn't. What to do? Most of us learn only through a bit of suffering. That's just the way life is. Yeah, you mentioned in the previous session being able to close down your energy when necessary until we are able to deal with it. How do we do this? Yeah, I think that's it. Turn off the accelerator. It means maybe reduce our practice. Maybe we're doing too much practice, too much formal practice, too much intense practice, for example. You know, calm it down a bit. Do simpler practices. Yeah, I think that's the way. And yeah, try and use this protective armor as a way of helping, temporarily at least, for a period of time, being bombarded and being bowled over, I would say, by negative energy. So yeah, I think everyone has to find their own way on this one. It's not an easy one, especially in the modern world where we are subjected to 50,000 inputs every day through internet and email and who knows what, and through the ether. Let's remember that we're impacted not only directly through people's words or emails or internet. We are actually we share this planet actually, you know, and we receive negativity through the ether from a particular person or from a group of people or from a general situation. And I think in the particular world we're living in now with this pandemic, I think most of us are kind of impacted by some kind of negativity. There's lots of positivity there also. That is also there. It's not all gloom and doom, but I really think there is almost a cloud of negativity that many of us are picking up. So yeah, that's on that. In Dharana 106, this is the next question. Have a look. Yeah, Dharana 106. The word that is written, yeah, with a capital T. Would this infer that to mean reality? Yeah, absolutely. In yogic science in India, that is often used as a description of, or an indication of reality. Could be this, this, that. It's a very nice way of putting it. And in some other systems, of course, they talk about the turiya, the fourth, or the chaturta, also fourth. You know, you've got the three gunas and this quality which transcends the three gunas. This is called the fourth. Very simple word, which I happen to like a lot. And here, could you please go back to Dharana 112 and say a little more about what you mean about seeing something from the perspective of Dwadashanta? My mind is interfering with that instruction. Yeah, it's a very profound dharana actually. And maybe after this question and answer session, we can do it again. It's indicating a mystical truth, which is beyond the mind actually, to be honest, because the mind divides, if you think about it. The mind says this is bad and this is good and this is nice and that's not so nice. You know, the mind that's the way the mind is designed. It's designed to find difference, to differentiate. And so it should be. You know, we are living creatures with certain tendencies, certain likes and dislikes. If we all like the same thing, it would be a bit strange, the world, I think. This is the beauty of life. There's so many combinations beyond our capacity to understand. So what a basic spiritual truth, which I don't think can be explained in any concept, and this is the closest I think they can get to it, is where there is no division between the person, we're talking about the individual here, the person who is perceiving and what is perceived. You know, it seems to be gobbledygook, it seems to be nonsense actually, because there is evidently a difference between me sitting here and the computer which I'm looking into. You know, if I can't say to you, I'm the computer, you'd start thinking, oh, this Nishchalananda's gone a bit crazy. Yeah? We're talking about something which is deeper than our mind. Remember, our understanding is mental, it's conceptual, that's the way we're designed, and part of the way the mind functions, part of the way the body functions, our emotions function, and even our energy functions, is that we see things, objects, actually we see objects out there. So from the level of our day-to-day experience, that is absolutely true. And we live our lives according to that. But there is a deeper level, actually, deeper level of reality, deeper level of consciousness, if you wish, where there is this fusion, where there is no difference between the perceiving object, and you would say subject perhaps, but it's still an object. This is an object sitting here. You may think that it's a subject, but as a body, mind, emotions, this is another object in the whole universe of objects, or what seem to be objects. Of course, we know energetically that even solid objects are not material as such. They are, but the basis of material objects is energy, and energy that takes form. And in taking form, each of us, we see difference. We see that, yes, that candle is over there, this computer's over here. That's the way life is, but on a fundamental level. And you remember, yoga, Advaita Tantra, and spiritual sciences are concerned about fundamentals. And the fundamentals do not come through thinking, actually. They come through another level of understanding, which we can access. But to access it, we have to dampen down, one, our addiction to thinking, to assuming that thinking is the way to understand fundamentally, which in my opinion is the way that Western philosophy has gone. And it lost me years ago. And because Western philosophy, I think, maybe there are exceptions also, but generally, Western philosophy is trying to use the mind to understand something which you can't understand with the mind, actually. It's something beyond the mind. And in the Eastern systems, in India in particular, but elsewhere also, they've understood that there is that real mystical depth, spiritual depth actually, can be only understood when thinking stops. Yeah, afterwards, you know, once we start to understand this, then we will use thinking to do whatever we need to do. You know, it's changing that perspective. So this is what this verse, this 112 dharana, is saying at the end. It's just pointing out that there can be an illuminative jnana, direct insight, but it's then indicating something which can arise out of this illuminative experience, and this is the realization that the personality and what is being perceived or seemingly perceived by the personality is not different. This is the mystery. This is the mystery of fundamental reality. So we don't need to walk around, saying, well, I'm that lamppost and I'm that cow over there, and no, we don't need to play these intellectual games, but let us at least be open to the indication that is in this verse. It's pointing out something which we can't understand by thinking, but is indicative of a deeper level of reality. So yeah, it's very fitting that it ends on that note, last dharana, and that very last sentence. That probably sums up the basic teachings of the Vigyana Bhairava. But of course, in the teachings of the Vigyana Bhairava, we have all these practices which are intended to bring us into this moment, so that we're not dwelling on the future and dwelling on the past, but we are very much focused on this present moment, and that we have more and more, even with all the dramas of life. And we don't need to put on an act. We don't need to say, well, I'm a yogi and I'm perfectly calm, and no. Everyone has their emotions, and even yogis, sages, saints, seers, call them what you want, even they, male, female, there's no gender in this, they also have their emotions. But the emotions they wash through them. That's what I'm saying. They don't hold it here. It comes through and it goes on. It's a very interesting one. Yeah, so the dharanas are there to give us more spaciousness so that we can live our lives more creatively. Because when we come from spaciousness, we have access to creativity, actually more creativity, because we can see things which don't seem to have any connection, and we can connect them. Yeah, my mind, the same question. My mind is interfering with the instruction. Yeah, and in the instruction, I've kind of elaborated by bringing us back to the Dwadashanta. It doesn't mention it there, but I think by identifying or being in contact with the Dwadashanta, it gives us a possibility of understanding the depth of this particular dharana. So yeah, it's not given in the text, but then these dharanas, most of them don't have much detail actually. Remember, they were written down 1,000 years ago, and they were written down in shorthand about elaborate practices which were passed on from the teacher to the students. And that's the beauty of it. It doesn't go into great detail. It gives you the general idea, and then the teacher can elaborate, or you can go into your own elaboration. Yeah, the mind gets in the way. That's why we're doing the Dwadashanta, so that we can kind of put out the intellect a little bit. Are these teachings the earliest source of the mystical truths that we know of? No, absolutely not. No. As far as I understand, the dharanas, the Vigyana Bhairava was written about 1,000 years ago. Some people say about 700 or 800 AD, and some people say way after the 1000 AD. But they probably represent teachings that have been around for a long time. Mysticism has been around probably as long as humans have been on planet Earth. And I'm sure even when, there were primitive, I suppose we can say primitive, even when there were primitive societies, 10,000 years ago, who knows? The time when humans came on planet Earth is being put further and further back. But I think whenever there have been human beings on planet, there have been people who, for whatever reason, have had access to a deeper understanding, and they have had the possibility of influencing those around them. So, yeah, this is not the earliest source of mystical teachings. Absolutely not. In fact, I would say it's a quite a recent evolution in mystical teachings.